Welcome guys, welcome to another video. So this is going to be a bit of a weird one. It's kind of two videos in one, a double video in two halves. So the first half is a lot of stuff on news and announcements that I really want to show off and talk to you guys about. The second half is going to be a bit of a video with Boots. So if you guys remember, after the beta, Boots and I got together, we did sort of a first impressions round table of what we think about the three recent elite specializations. Well, following that video, obviously there was a ton of feedback from you guys in the comments what you thought of the elite specs, and I thought I'd gather them together and we could do like a round two, but dedicated to each of the professions. So this last weekend, I got together with Boots and we chatted just about the Bladesworn Q&A format, like the End of Dragons daily series, but it's the two of us and we're just on the Bladesworn. And the idea is hopefully we'll do one on the Catalyst, we'll do one on the Vindicator as well. That's the back half of this video. I actually wanted to upload it earlier on this week, but I've been very sidetracked by another project that's currently going on. So let's deal with the first half. That's news and announcements. There's a lot happening with Guild Wars. First of all, the footage in the background you can see is a teaser that ArenaNet released on their channel yesterday. It's of Shing G. It's only about a minute long. You take off the intro, you take off the outro, and yeah, there's really not too much to it. But the reason they put this trailer out here is because tomorrow there's going to be a guild chat, and this looks like it's going to be a really fun one. It's in-game playthrough of Shing G in End of Dragons. So if you remember, through all the streams and releases that they've done so far, I was kind of saying that I think that what they really need to do is just get in game and show people how the expansion looks to play. Well, we're finally at that moment, so I have very, very high hopes for this. I know a lot of us are feeling lukewarm about the elite specs. I know a lot of us are feeling lukewarm about fishing or about like the siege turtle, which there's very little information on right now. But finally we'll get some real gameplay. And from the teaser, I spy an awful lot of Tengu too, which is quite nice. So what I'll be doing tomorrow is streaming all day. As like a waiting room stream as we roll up to the official one. And when the official one goes on, I'll throw you guys over to the ArenaNet official stream, or I might decide to restream. I haven't entirely decided just yet. And what we'll do is we'll be playing Guild Wars in the background. I might throw some Guild Wars 1 on, so we actually explore the original game Shing G, how that could be some footage for the background right here. I don't know, we'll do fun stuff. And there's a lot of fun stuff to look at that I'm out of touch with. Like, for example, this! Yes, the next elite spec teaser. There's only two more at this point. This one is clearly the Thief. It's funny, if we didn't already know about the Vindicator, I think you might guess this is possibly Rev because of like all the red everywhere. But it's clearly very thiefy. You know, Deadeye already took a lot of red in on its theme. But we can see most importantly, I mean, from this stance, it's going to look a bit acrobatic. We are a thief after all. It has a scepter. And so the scepter is especially interesting. This is a caster-themed weapon coming to this profession. I don't think it's the first thing most people have guessed. Being a one-handed weapon, I think that means a lot for dual skills and could be particularly interesting because obviously if you get it in the offhand too, that's going to be especially cool. Though there's no necessary reason it definitely will be that. But looking at something mid-rangey that's not pistol maybe, looking at something that's magic-themed, I think is especially interesting. The idea of a Shadowmancer, someone who perhaps plays with stealth a bit more, maybe creates like deceptive shadowy clones and summons them and moves them around. There's a lot of weird places they could go with this. In many ways, Daredevil feels made for End of Dragons and made for Cantha, but we've already got Daredevil. So where are they going now? I think that's going to be very, very, very fun. And keeping an eye out on the Twitter, I'm sure we'll see a couple more of the teasers as the next few days roll on and they finish this big Shing G teaser. So yeah, in an ideal world, I'd have like a full 20 to 30 minute discussion just on this for you guys. There's not too much to say for now, so I've skipped it till here. Halloween has also started. It looks like Joko's in this year's Halloween. The Miss Stranger, that weird guy who appeared at the Eye of the North recently, who I'm pretty sure is hinting at post-End of Dragons stories. He's back in this as far as I understand, and as a part of maybe a new player drive to give people blood-bound weapons, so I want to look into that. There might be some new events around. DirectX 11 beta is obviously ongoing, and I believe our first substantive update to that's going on. Along with DirectX 11, you guys might have missed it, but there's a fan project called Guild Wars 2 Remastered, where it's kind of like a sophisticated version of Reshade. I've always covered old post-processing suites and software like that, so I might actually turn that on my client. Needless to say, there's a lot that I can look at on the stream. The reason I've missed a lot of this so far as this week's gone along is I've actually been playing Final Fantasy. Now, you guys might have missed out on this, but if you go to my second channel, WoodenPotatoes 2, there's about 50 hours, or 50 to 60 hours of Let's Playing that I've been doing. I kind of consider it Let's Playing. It's not quite the same, but I've been live a huge amount this week playing Final Fantasy 14, which if you guys know, you've been following my channel, I actually started playing back in February, but took a massive break of. And wow, it's been incredible. Really, really enlightening to learn a lot more about that MMO and how it's been doing things. As I've been going through that stream, I'm actually building towards a review versus Guild Wars 2 review. It's actually kind of fascinating to see that the two games' development has aligned very closely. Like when Guild Wars got its first expansion, Heart of Thorns, Final Fantasy, just about at the same time, had its first expansion, Heavensward. And when Guild Wars 2 was doing Season 3 to support Heart of Thorns, Final Fantasy had its own series of patches supporting Heavensward. So there's a lot of amazing comparisons and discussion that's been going on all week, but it's been over on Twitch. I didn't announce any of it to any of you guys. I'm not much of a streamer. In the past, I haven't been much of one. So I figure it's about time I actually mention that to some of you guys. And if you're interested in following the review as it's been created before it ends up the full-fledged YouTube video, after this Shing stream, I'm sure I'll be right back at it. Don't forget you can check out WP2 as well to just see all of that content. So if you feel like, oh, I'm missing some WP stuff, there's a lot to watch. You might just not have seen it. There'll be links to all the relevant stuff in the description. And that's about it, guys. So really big, exciting day for news tomorrow. I'll be live with Guild Wars as much as I can be. And we'll be building up to some Shing stuff. In the meantime, here's the podcasty type thing that I recorded with Boots last weekend, and I lost a bit of confidence with it. So I'm sort of delaying the upload till now. Thanks very much, guys. Enjoy, and I'll hand you over to me and Boots now.
Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Kunavine, it does. They need me.
Okay, so just in any random order, the first message I got here is from Matt D, who says, I'm definitely with Boots on the Bladesworn. So just to recap, your stance on it was that it locked you out of Core Warrior too much, you felt, and that it was too, like, binary.
Yeah, but I didn't overall, like, if that's the design that they're going for, that you always use the gun blade, then they designed it properly in that respect. It's not something that I would have done, but it doesn't feel bad to play because of that.
Well, I think you might be giving the studio a little bit too much credit there, because they clearly didn't design it to just be the gun saber, right? Because there is pistol offhand.
Are you sure?
They did, yeah. Well, they gave you a pistol.
They gave you 3 minutes of footage of the pistol off. Not even. They gave you 30 seconds of footage of the pistol offense in the preview. They were like, oh yeah, and there's also a pistol. Look at it go. And then
really, you think it's an afterthought? I don't know, man. That feels like a huge departure to me. I feel like they want us swapping, and they failed to have us swapping.
Maybe that's true. There is literally a trait that says you do damage when you weapon swap.
Right. Well, Boots, I have to say, a lot of feedback was people saying, yeah, they felt locked into the saber too much. Like, a lot of people saying that. I did also, while I was streaming Final Fantasy yesterday, someone said, Boots is crazy, I was swapping constantly. But I've only seen one guy say that. Most people do seem to, and I don't know whether we just say the most people are saying it, so therefore it's true. But most people do feel like they were locked in a bit much.
No, it's possible I'm crazy, though.
Well, I don't know. I'm inclined to agree with you, because when I look back at me playing the Bladesworn, and you know, I said I found it really clunky. The thing did not click for me at all. Vindicator clicked straight away. This thing did not. And I wonder if it's because I was trying too much to swap constantly, you know, because I really was. And it's like you've got 3 modes, and I just couldn't. You've got gun saber, regular weapon, and gun saber's dragon slash mode.
Yeah,
and
to me, the gunblade did not feel clunky. The word is annoying, but the only clunky things I felt about it were going into and out of Dragon Stance. There's like a kind of an internal cooldown kind of thing. Like it takes a split second, even a little bit longer than that, to actually get into your Dragon Stance and come out of it. So when you're using Daring Dragon, the one where you constantly go into Dragon Stance over and over and over again, and then you have your abilities up, really felt it a lot more there, and it felt a little bit janky because there's like that time that you can't do anything and you're locked out of everything, even if you want to spam your burst skills, you know.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. It doesn't flow as well as, say, just a weapon swap you would expect to flow. Yeah,
right. Yeah, exactly.
Also, by the way, did you hear apparently there was dev confirmation that there was a bug with the Bladesworn. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I assume so, because if you use your Dragon Slash, you get locked out of weapon swap.
Yeah, that's the thing, and they said that was a bug. I think that was the bug,
yeah,
or it's something like weapon swap going on cooldown when you enter Dragon Slash mode.
Yeah,
That's a bug as well. So those things hopefully will refine it out. And, you know, when we are talking about just bugs, I have a lot more sympathy that hopefully they'll, you know...
So, I mean, that is one of the reasons you would never switch back into your other weapon, or rarely switch back into your other weapon, is because when you're in your Gunblade, you're going to want to use your Dragon Slash every once in a while. And as soon as you do, you can't weapon swap. So it's like, yeah, okay, sure, I guess I'm here now.
All right, well, back to Matt D's comment here. They're saying they agree with you that you get locked in too much. Losing both the second weapon set and burst skills really stings, makes the Bladesworn feel exceptionally one note. Outside of using Pistol 5 for the explosion traits, or making something work with Rifle for the ammunition traits, there is no reason to use anything but the gun saber. So I do have a bit of a response to this.
Okay.
The person I mentioned before, he said, no, it's crazy. You definitely use the other weapons. They were talking about axe for adrenaline building with the axe trait. They said it's really, really, really good, and they got a lot of value out of that. And I know, actually, while I was during the beta, people were recommending I try that playstyle out, and I didn't get round to it. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that. Is that valid in any way? Do you think once these bugs are gone, that will be like a significant thing? I mean, the devs load us on with an axe in...
So I know you don't like talking about it, but it's possible that is the way to go for like PvE, doing as much damage as possible, because in PvP, for example, or in general PvE, I don't think flow is ever really an issue.
Oh, really?
Especially in PvP, because you never want to stay in your stance and use all of your adrenaline or all of your flow all at once. So you always kind of have leftover flow when you're using it. And
so this is more of a fractal strike mission raid thing, you think?
I think the building adrenaline with axes is more of a very much more of a PvE thing.
Well, counterpoint to that, one thing that I found. Now, this is not a criticism. I want to say. By the way, there was a message from someone on the video. I unfortunately I didn't highlight it, but he said he didn't substantiate any of his thoughts, but he said, "Bladesworn is so bad, I'm losing respect for this channel." As in so I guess we were too forgiving of it in their mind. They didn't say what they thought was so bad. But here, I do have an observation about the Bladesworn, which definitely impacted my enjoyment of it. And I don't know if they'll ever fix, and I don't know whether this is a valid criticism to the Bladesworn. But I do want to say anyway, the way that open world PvE matters, right? When we think about just running around in Cantha in the open world, the expansions come out, you're having fun. You kill something, you break combat, you lose adrenaline. And then you've got to, like, get back into adrenaline or flow, as it's now called. You've got to get back in and build your flow again. And just that very simple nature of how often you break in and out of combat made the Bladesworn feel horrible to me. I mean, really, it did. What I would like to see as a change to the Bladesworn is your adrenaline lingers for longer after you break combat. I think that would do so much for it, because that was a big thing for me. And there, we're talking about axe to build adrenaline. That, to me, then felt good, because it was like, oh, I've lost all my adrenaline again. I want to test it out a bit more.
Yeah, so like I said, for PvE, I think axe kind of switching to that to build adrenaline isn't stupid. It's a good thing to do. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Because like that is a big thing, and that's not necessarily true when you're constantly in combat for 10 minutes because you're fighting the Veil Guardian or whatever, you know.
Yeah. And of course, you'd also use your like great sword or sword warhorn or something as your as another option as your offhand for mobility outside of combat if you wanted to.
I want to circle back to this other point as well, right? This commenter, Matt D, says, I really want weapon swap back. See, I want to know your thoughts on this, because to me, I was really struggling to wrap my head around regular weapon, gun saber, and gun saber's Dragon Slash mode. That's 3 modes already. Is a 4th mode, like... Do people really want a 4th mode? I feel like that's going to be way too much for my head. I say this as someone who was an Ellie main for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. You have 4 weapon attunements. You have 20 weapon skills as an Ellie. This would just be another 20 weapon skills.
Yeah, so you think it's totally valid and fun?
I mean, I would be salivating over that kind of thing, but I don't think we're going to get it.
If you could reinstate one thing, burst or weapon swap, which would the one thing you'd pick be?
Burst.
Yeah, I think it would be burst for me too. I think there's just a lot of flavor and fun to be had with burst, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it would be especially cool. I had this idea too. While you are on your gun saber, the burst for the regular weapon underneath is still available to you. So now, even though you might not be swapping into the weapon too much, as we've criticized, you still get a feel for the underneath weapon because the burst skill is there. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. That would be.
I can hear it. You're not too excited about that one.
No, I think if we're giving back the bursts, then make the person actually be using that weapon to use the burst.
Right. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Because the reason why I think the burst should come back, for example, is there are so many weapons that are only very useful sometimes, especially in PvP, with the burst. Like Hammer does no damage and has a few CCs, but the burst is like its identity. The leap and area.
Earthshaker, yeah, you're right. I agree.
Yeah, so there's a lot of weapons that their identity is their burst. So it's tough that they're all gone.
I think that's what's quite fun about the Berserker, the way that it kind of played further with bursts, and now and Spellbreaker kind of lent away from bursts a bit, kind of just sort of repackaged them, and now this is remove them completely, which I guess is kind of a logical progression. Let's go to the next comment and interrupt at any time. Press A to die. It says, my thoughts on the Bladesworn. Overall, it felt like a deep but tiny pool. The mechanic itself has some interesting buildcraft, and it felt new and shiny, but then you realise that's sort of all there is. With the other specs on Warrior, it felt like the catalogue of Warrior weapons had added to the discovery of new experimentation. On Bladesworn, you just get the one weapon set without a burst, and most of the time, you want to be in Gunblade anyway. All those weapons Warriors has access to are now just a tiny footnote to the centerpiece of the Gunblade. I'm also a little annoyed that the strength and discipline trait lines seem to be head and shoulders above the rest. I was getting a little bit sick of those already, hoping for a change, and I guess now he feels like he's got to use them all the time. Discipline especially was an oh come on moment. The concept of one weapon set promises a release from fast hands. Finally, now we just want to use the Gunblade all the time. Oh, but the burst cooldown is quite punishing the new weapon swap, as it were. Is there a way to reduce it? Yes, well, in discipline. So you kind of you feel like you can get away from discipline because you don't care about fast hands, but then you're going straight back into discipline because of its synergy with the bursts, which is what the dragon slashes are all about. So my favorite thing about it, Mercer's Hammer remains the most fun trait on Warrior and the supreme adrenaline flow generator. Getting 10 stacks of lingering flow thanks to using Stomp with a hammer, and it even kicks having more flow than I could spend. It was as ridiculous as I hoped. Probably going to be exploring.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's kind of interesting.
So, let me translate that for people who don't know Warrior very well. That's the Grandmaster. Whenever you land a CC or a stun of some kind, you get adrenaline out of it. So, he's using that to fuel his dragon slashes, right? With a hammer underneath. But he says,
you have to be using the hammer, though, right?
I'm not sure, actually. Is it one of the split ones? Is it just basic functionality? Your stuns generate adrenaline. Also, by the way, hammer does more damage and cooldown or something. I would assume it might be split in the game at this point, because they tend to do that, don't they? You got the perk, and then you've got the weapon-specific element. But they say probably going to be exploring Cantharon and Berserker.
Okay. That's interesting. Well, you're probably going to have to anyway at first, because you have to unlock these things.
Well, yeah. Well, that's quite interesting about this X pack, by the way. I don't think anyone's thinking about that. But with Heart of Thorns, you had no choice but to be your core stuff.
Oh, it is. Okay, so it is a split thing. The Merciless Hammer. It looks like the more damage and reduced recharge is one thing, and then the Green Adrenaline when you disable a foe is another.
Yeah, so you could be getting it from the Grandmaster's stuns as you Dragon Slash and stuff too, which is quite cool. Yeah, that's quite an interesting thing about the expansion. When Heart of Thorns came out, you didn't really have an elite spec to run through with already. POF, let's say you're a Mesmer, you just had Chrono while you built towards Mirage. This is the first time you're going to have a choice how you build to the new elite spec. I could be a Chrono or a Mirage in Cantha as I work towards Virtuoso,
Or even a Core Mesmer.
Yeah, or even core, I suppose. So, I don't know. I think that might be quite interesting. What I'll probably do, though, and I recommend this to everyone else. I might be wrong to recommend this, but what I'll probably do is play it as it's unlocking. I think you learn it a bit better. That you'll be weaker, obviously, because you won't have the full thing. But I think that is the best way to get a grips with the new Elite spec. Like, play it as you're unlocking. Doing it all in the background and then just swapping it all on, I don't know. It's kind of like we said on the previous video. Getting a ton of skills all at once can be a bit tricky to get your head around, but slowly filtering them in is probably a little bit better.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this last time. What's interesting about the flow? Because you know how you could pop your like Signet of Fury back in the for any other warrior build and get your full adrenaline and then use your burst really quickly if you wanted to outside of combat.
Yeah, Signet of Fury was the main thing I was leaning on in Bladesworn, by the way, when I was playing it. I was like, I just need adrenaline. I keep breaking combat, so I put the Signet on.
Yeah. Oh, actually, Signet of Fury, I don't know if it's a bug or it's because there's some kind of animation associated with Signet of Fury, but even though there's no cast time for Signet of Fury, if you use it while you're in the Dragon Stance, you get popped out of Dragon Stance.
Whoa, really? I didn't see that bug. Damn.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a bug, though. That's what happens.
All right, but yeah, go on.
Okay, so I was going to say, though, out of combat, the way the flow works is if you're stacking up like 2, 4, 6, 8 stacks of flow out of combat by just using utility skills, like if you use Berserker Stance, if you use the heal that gives you adrenaline, if you use Signet of Fury, if you use that double flow, like the ammunition flow thing from the new thing, and you could get out of combat 100% flow and then charge your 10 ammunition out of combat and just stay like that with 10 ammunition waiting for somebody to come by.
Oh, wow. Did you try that in PvP? I can imagine that's so funny.
No, and I haven't tried it in PvP, but I now, next beta maybe I'll do that.
That's an interesting idea, like while you're capping a node, you know?
Yeah, just stand in the center of a node and have...
It's uncontested, no one's there, and you just prep. Yeah. Can you flick a step to someone as well, right? And like jump someone basically. With
the flicker step is not that far. But yes,
no, I know, but maybe you could do it around a corner maybe or something.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you could flicker step.
Right, okay.
Oh, by the way, also, sorry, another thing I tested, you can take a Mesmer portal or a Necro portal while you're in your stance and it doesn't break stance.
Oh, that's also cool.
Yeah. So
that is cool, so you can bomb out.
You can get like 10 or 20 or whatever it is of these Bladesworns that are all out of combat, stacked to 10, and then get a Mesmer portal to a fight somewhere, and everybody unleashes at the same time.
In World vs. World. Now, the spectacle of that would be incredible. Don't get me wrong. I don't know whether it would ever.
And they'll all be unblockable and stun people at the same time, too.
Well, one thing that did come up, by the way, was... you mentioned this on the previous video, that in the competitive modes, it doesn't actually do that much damage, though, right? A Vindicator dodge did 8k, this thing was doing like 6.
I don't know about World vs. World, actually. I think it's also not as high as it could be in World vs. World, but in PvP, yeah. In PvP, it is not nearly the same caliber as in PvE. I think the highest I ever got one of them to be was like 7,000. I see people charge them for 10 sometimes, and they only get like 8,000. And that's kind of crazy because if you have to sit there for 5 full seconds, and that's not reducible, so 5 full seconds of waiting and not getting interrupted or anything is almost impossible in PvP. And to only do 8,000 damage from that's way too low.
It is interesting, right? I had a big comment where someone was comparing it to Deadeye. And they love Deadeye, they're a Thief player, and they were like really disappointed that Deadeye didn't stack up or whatever. But when I read the comment, I thought, well, hold on though, Deadeye's got way more quality of life on each of its Death's Judgments, really. And, you know, there have been slight tweaks as well to like Binding Shadow and stuff nowadays, but it's had some really cheesy, really gross ways of triggering it. I feel like Bladesworn has a lot harder deal. And speaking of Death's Judgment, this brings me to the last comment here. This is from Grim Haunting. I'm disappointed that ArenaNet added another high damage single burst skill burst with Dragon Slash on the Bladesworn on Warrior. It just brings back more memories of how broken Killshot was for the first 1.5 years of the game and provides more DPS with the one skill than what various DPS builds can currently put out, even with the charge up. I kind of thought ArenaNet was trying to move away from burst damage and focus on sustain, ... At least that's what they've been saying. For why they've nerfed multiple builds in multiple classes, including this past year. So what do you make of that, Boots? I guess they're cynical that this...
Are they talking specifically about... What are they talking... Like, are they talking PvE or PvP?
Well, people never substantiate that when it comes to Guild Wars discussion. I find myself wondering the same thing. But I think they might have a point that these playstyles, we were talking about Death's Judgment, Killshot I think is valid, they don't last that long. You know, it's like when Berserker came out and Gunflame spam in World vs. World. They don't last long. So it is interesting that they're still, you know, building elite specs with that as a central concept, it's like, do you trust that this will actually last the length of time?
That's a good question. People get used to playing against that kind of thing. You're right. So like, this is, I guess we're talking about PvP now. People get used to playing against a 100 Blades warrior back in the day, or a rifle guy. So yeah, I mean, they won't be as effective as they could be, because if you play against good players, they'll know how to avoid the big hits. But I think
this is the hardest setup. This is the most transparent, blatant setup I've seen ever. This is more telegraphed than a Deadeye, certainly, who can abuse stealth and more significant range.
Yeah,
it's
and
more
I'd say right now
telegraphed
the payoff is not worth it based on the damage in PvP. It's the payoff of Dragon Strike right now is very good with your second Grandmaster skill, the one that makes it unblockable and stuns them, and unblindable. So with that trait, using it with like 1 stack, 2 stacks, just using it right away is worth it. It's there's a good payoff for that. But
I guess I always assumed, Boots, that in PvE we'd be going for the big damage. And in the competitive modes, I just always assumed, well, you'd use the ranged one more. You'd use the mobility one more. And if Bladesworn ever falls out of favor in those modes, the way I would bring it into favor is I wouldn't touch the one, really. I would be helping it with its mobility, and I'd be helping it with its ranged strike. So because that's how it would round out, in a less cheesy way.
And the mobility is really good too, like on the F2 or the skill 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. If he was talking about PvE, is it something that ArenaNet has said that they want to go away from burst damage in PvE?
Well, it depends. You can't even just say PvE, can you? Because it depends whether he's talking about open world, where you can burst things down. I would argue that at no point in strikes or raids or fractal... Well, fractals are a little bit different. There's kind of the idea of bursting a pack down quickly. But generally speaking, it's all sustained damage in those modes anyway, right? And
yeah, I think I guess talking about PvP.
Yeah, I guess my worry of the Bladesworn is the idea that I'm just going 1-1-1-1-1 ultimately, but it's not going to be that. So there you have it. I mean, just a little bit more thought on the Bladesworn, guys, and you can see now the idea of this video. We're going to do one for the Catalyst and the Vindicator. So I've already got comments about those on the original video we did yesterday. But if you guys have further thoughts, drop them down here. I'll be watching closely as always, and I'll highlight them, and me and Boots will have a chat about them. The idea of this is to get a little bit more detailed, like back and forth and like discussion about the elite specs, rather than just sort of a gloss over like we did before. I
think I forgot to mention something though, because with the press A to die one, it was a long comment, and I think we only started talking about like the last bits of what they were saying. I think I remember them saying earlier in the comment that they feel that the Bladesworn is like a one-trick pony essentially with a gunblade, and there's not much depth to it. And I mean, I guess yes, you're using one weapon kind of, so you are kind of a one-trick pony, but I think there is depth to the class, because I think the ammunition system that they introduced with some of the traits and the elite spec could have a lot of play. And yeah, I think that's
I think you're right. To be fair, by the way, Press to A to Die's comment was that they felt it was a deep but tiny pool. That's what they said.
So yeah, they're saying that the gunblade is deep, but it is just the gunblade.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm still keen on... I'm surprised. You never tried a shout heal thing, right? I said we talked about that on the...
I did. No, it's good.
Oh, yeah. So how's the ammunition recharging feel on that?
It's pretty great. It's pretty great.
Why have we not talked about this much? That sounds exciting to me.
Yeah. I think that's probably the... Yeah, well, I think everybody basically was running shouts with at least Shake It Off and like... the Might one
for Great Justice
with the trait, because even without building any healing power into it, it's like 1300 heal or 1100 heal or something like that. And with the Shake It Off, being able to get an extra Shake It Off just from your elite skill and then recharging them even quicker because of all the single use things, the final use things, it's quite strong. It's in PvP, the elite skill is 60 seconds instead of 30, so it's not quite as strong as I thought it was going to be, but it is good.
That's the big regret I have, that I never went to a competitive setting and tried the shout heal setup. I'm not too excited about it from a PvE context, but in competitive I was really, really keen on that.
Unfortunately, though, the healing power doesn't scale that great with those. So if you want to run like a really supportive version and you go like the biggest amulet you could get in PvP that gives you healing power gives you only 500 healing power. So the heals go from like 1100 each to 1300 each, and that's not that big of an improvement. So it's almost not even worth it to do that.
No, yeah, right, but that's actually fine to me. That means I'm liberated to play a plethora of different amulets and still get the flavor of the playstyle. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm quite keen on that. One other final little thing, a point that Boots made on the previous part. There was a comment or two, I haven't highlighted them here. Someone said, oh, they need to put more burning on it. Do you got any other further thoughts on Condi? Because, I mean, you'd mentioned there's basically no Condi here. Do you think there should be a Condi Dragon Slash?
I mean, I don't think it needs one. You know, like...
Me neither. What I think's interesting here is, for some of these other new elite specs, like when I look at the Virtuoso, it's a great example. Harbinger falls into it a little bit as well. It's like they put in a Condi line, but it feels like an afterthought, and I'm not really going to use it anyway. Yeah. So it feels a bit weird. Meanwhile, and now we've got the Bladesworn, which is like they're not even doing that. They're just like, look, we're not doing
all they did was
Condi.
Put in one trait that gives 1 stack of burning for 1 second.
Yeah,
when
for a
you
bit
use
of
final
flavor.
ammunition skill, and it's like, why is that even there? It's literally just for flavor.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to angle into, Boots, is, you know, if the criticism is it's just gun saber and that feels one-dimensional, and then the response is, well, that's what we want it to be. If that's all, let's just take that as a touchstone for now, and it might not be, but if that's the situation, well, one of my answers to that would be to say, well, maybe I should be allowed to make this a Condi gun saber or a power gun saber, so that to play into this tiny but deep pool concept, you know? Would it not be deeper if I could augment it in a slightly more interesting way, you know?
Yeah, you're right.
But I guess they just figure that it's a burst weapon, and burst Condi isn't something they like the idea of. I mean, burst Condi has existed many times in the past with various burn spikes, but I suppose they don't want to do it. So.
I suppose you could run that. You could run that strength trait that says when you stun someone, you put a stack of bleeding and weakness on them.
Oh yeah, just try your best of that. Yeah. It's not quite the same though. I do like the idea of the spectacle. If you think about it, we're talking, what was it? They did 480,000 damage, all buffs for the Dragon Slash 1. The Condi equivalent of that, I like the spectacle of one animation and you put 100 bleeds out or something. It's ridiculous, and I'm positive they don't want that for all the server calculations and stuff, that would probably, so we're not going to see that, but I like the idea of that spectacle, you know.
Imagine if the third skill, instead of being a range thing, because the range thing is not very useful to use as opposed to the slash through, instead of being a range thing, it doubles the Condi stacks on your opponent.
Oh, that's brilliant, and then just pair that with a nice necro friend who will epi it around.
Exactly.
It's good.
All Condi stacks are doubled.
Well, there you go, guys. That's some of our thoughts on the Bladesworn. Again, please drop down your thoughts. Catalyst, Vindicator. I don't know what order we'll do it in next. We'll just see how we're feeling. And thanks for coming on, Boots. We'll be reading keenly. Cheers, guys. Don't forget, Boots has his own YouTube channel. I keep forgetting to plug it. If you look in the comments, I will have a comment there with a link to his channel. You've also started streaming recently, right, Boots?
Yeah, a little bit.
So you guys can, I'm sure I'll have links to that as well. And yeah, keep your eyes out, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one very soon. Ta-ta.
Bye-bye.